Good afternoon. We are the Group 9 and these are the members of our group. Our topic is all about Elli's 10 principles for the SLA classroom. But before we discuss our topic, let's know first who is Rod Ellis. Professor Rod Ellis is known as the father of second language acquisition. He is a renowned linguist. When we say linguist, ito yung taong nag-aaral ng iba't ibang lingwahe or a person who is specialized in linguistics. He is also the author of the second language acquisition and grammar. SLA or second language acquisition is referred to as language 2 or L2. It is referred as the second language because yung first language is yung unang natutunan ng isang bata, which is the native language or the L1. But SLA is a subdiscipline of applied linguistics because it is still very young in the field of the study at marami siyang mga controversy pa, like what approaches to use and the efficacy of the teaching. Because of these controversies, it is unwise to formulate a set of general principles of instructed language acquisition. However, you can present it as a provisional or tentative specifications in the form of principles. That's why Professor Ellis chose to present his own provisional specifications in the form of principles. The first principle is instruction need to ensure that learners develop both a rich repertoire of formulaic expressions and a rule-based competence. Formulaic expressions. It caters to fluency. Ito yung ability mo on how to speak or write another languages smoothly. According to classroom studies by Elli, 1984, Miles, Mitchell, and Hopper, 1998, 1999, and Miles 2004 demonstrate that learners often internalize rote-learned materials as chunks, breaking them down for analysis later on. Kasi diba, for example, when a teacher discusses a topic, most of the students will just listen to the discussions. They will absorb all the information by chunks. Then when the teacher gives an activity, that's when the time na hinihimay nila yung information that the teacher told them for them to be able to answer the activity. Formulaic expression is also refers to the fixed and prefabricated chunks of language that a speaker uses heavily in everyday interactions. For example, what is your name? Hi, hello, thank you, excuse me, sorry, and many more. That's why formulaic chunks play a large role in early language acquisition. Rule-based competence. A knowledge of specific grammatical rules. It is when the teaching implies the teacher rely on rules. Kasi diba, when you teach about how to use a correct grammar, there are certain rules. And that's what the teacher should emphasize in teaching the learners. It caters to complexity and accuracy. When we say complexity and accuracy, it is the quality on how precise and correct you are in speaking and writing languages. It is also referred to a focus on form approach. Traditionally, language instruction has been directed at developing rule-based competence through the systematic teaching of pre-selected structures. That's why, because of this, Professor Elli proposed that formulaic expression should be taught first before the grammar. Kasi diba, paano mo matuturuan on how to use the correct grammar kung yung mga bata hindi nila alam what are the basic of formulaic expressions. Because according to Elli, a complete language curriculum needs to ensure that it caters to the development of both formulaic expressions and a rule-based knowledge. So, dapat kapag nagtuturo ka, dapat visible silang dalawa, yung formulaic expressions and rule-based competence. And that would be all. And I will ask Miss Ilurpidisari Jane to discuss the next topic. Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Miss Asherto, and I am going to tackle about the second principle. The second principle is instruction needs to ensure that learners focus predominantly on meaning. When we say predominantly, it is to focus generally on meaning. So, pag maingon gaytag predominantly, but ipasibot, ang general nga, mag-base in, when we are going to teach, we will going to base generally sa meaning niya. According to Elli, when we are teaching the L2, we need to focus generally on meaning. There are two meaning of focus predominantly. The semantic meaning and the pragmatic meaning. When we say semantic meaning, it is the meaning of items or of specific grammatical structures. It focuses on rules, yung literal na ibig sabihin ng salitang kinagamit. While yung pragmatic meaning is the highly contextualized meaning that arises in acts of communication. It is the dealing with things sensibly and realistically in a way that it is based on practical rather than theoretical consideration. For example, will you crack open the door? I am getting hot. Kung sa semantic, yung crack word ay it is to break. Yung literal na break. Kung baga ka nang kung sa Bisaya pa, gubaon. But in pragmatic, it is to open. So, the difference of the two is the semantic, yung meaning is the literal meaning of the word. While yung sa pragmatic, it is on how you use the word. It is how you use the word. Kung paano mo ginagamit yung word to construct the sentence. There are three reasons and opportunity to focus on pragmatic meaning. First, in the eyes of pragmatic theorists, e.g. Prabo 1987, Long 1996, only when learners are engaged in decoding and encoding messages in the context of actual acts of communication are the conditions created for acquisition to take place. When we say encoding and decoding, it is to understand and interpret the messages. We need to let the students be engaged in actual acts of communication para mas mabilis silang makaintindi at madaling matuto. The second one is to develop true fluency in L2. Learners must have opportunities to create pragmatic meaning. Gclassroom 1998. And engaging learners. And number 3 is engaging learners in activities where they are focused on creating pragmatic meaning in intrinsically motivating. So to develop true fluency in L2, kailangan natin bigyan ng opportunity yung mga learners by engaging them to activities na makagawa sila ng meaning naturally. Dahil according to Ellis, in advocating this principle, he do not wish to suggest that instruction needs to be directed exclusively at providing learners with opportunities to create pragmatic meaning. Only that to be effective, instruction must include such opportunities that ideally over an entire curriculum, they should be predominant. So, hindi kailangan natin i-spoon-fed lagi yung mga students para matuto sila. We need to give them opportunities to create pragmatic meaning para mas effective yung pagtuturo natin. Kasi 'di ba, how can the students make their own understanding and express what they have learned and understand sa tinuturo mo if you haven't give them a chance on how to create their own. So kailangan they need to actualize what they have learned in order for them to understand much better. And that would be all. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is the continuation of Rhode Island's Principle 3. In Principle 3, instruction needs to ensure that learners also focus on form. Through inductive or deductive grammar lessons, an inductive approach to grammar teaching is designed to encourage learners to notice pre-selected forms in the input to which they are exposed. In short, inductive grammar lesson or teaching is the student need to learn new things and gain knowledge by themselves. For example, Teacher Anna gave her student a sample of a poem with shapes. Teacher Anna don't tell her student what are they are going to learn at the start. Student will read the poem and find the shapes. Teacher Anna focuses her students' comment towards the shape. Teacher Anna is holding a ball. Teacher Anna helps her student to recognize what is the shape of the ball. And a deductive approach seeks to make learners aware of the explicit grammatical rule. In short, this is a method that only teacher are speaking and student are listening. For example, teacher teach everything and students need to give an example according to teacher's example. The difference between inductive and deductive grammar lessons or teaching, the inductive approach is the student-centered, and then the deductive teaching is the teacher-centered. Ang diri sa inductive grammar lessons or teaching, ang student here is slow ang process ayang learning. Tas pag-abot sa deductive approach is ang student is paspas na ang iyahang process sa iyahang learning. Kumbaga, ang inductive is specific to general at ang deductive naman is general to specific. Through communicative tasks designed to provide opportunities for learners to practice specific grammatical structures while focused primarily on meaning. So, which means, for example, direction here is underline the nouns in the sentence and circle the verbs. Example number 1, the cat ran up the tree. So the noun here is cat and the verb here is run. Through opportunities for learners to plan how they will perform a communicative task before they start it and or by corrective feedback or drawing attention to learners' errors during or after the performance of a task. For example, Kasi 'di ba may mga mag-aaral na mahina pa pagdating sa language 3. Hindi agad nila ito maintindihan ang isang topic na ibinigay ng kanilang mga guro kapag hindi ipinapaliwanag ng mga guro kung ano ang dapat nilang gawin.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the continuation of the 10 principles for the SLA classroom. I'm going to discuss the principle number 4, which is the instruction needs to focus on developing implicit knowledge of the L2, yung second language, while not neglecting implicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge, procedural, unconscious, accessed by means of automatic process and not verbalizable. So meaning, L2 as a tool for communicating and 2, knowledge function as communicators. So ang goal aning implicit knowledge is should be to develop implicit knowledge. So dapat siya ma-develop yung implicit knowledge natin. So implicit knowledge is trying to promote your knowledge, yung implicit knowledge natin. Then, so, you should be developed and you have to promote it. Yung ultimate goal dito is to develop implicit knowledge. Yun yung goal sa implicit knowledge. Hindi enough yung marunong ka lang. You should develop. You have to promote the implicit knowledge. Okay. So, dito naman sa explicit knowledge, dito yung declarative, facts about language, access through controlled processing, conscious, verbalizable, so meta-language. So, explicit knowledge, so dapat you can speak about it, you can talk about it, you may start the explicit language before na yung implicit knowledge. So, kumbaga, mag-start ka talaga sa una before ka sa pangalawang lingwahe na dapat mo nga gamitin to communicate others. Okay. So, yung role naman dito sa explicit knowledge is as an initial starting point for the development of implicit knowledge. So, kumbaga, mag-start ka talaga sa explicit to implicit knowledge para yung ma-develop yung implicit. So, pangalawa, yung role sa explicit is as a means of developing awareness. Yung alam mong hindi tama, dapat mong i-correct of what needs to be learned. And thus, facilitating the processes involved in developing implicit knowledge. The role of consciousness raising tasks. So, as a teacher, hindi dapat yung marunong lang tayo magsalita. Kailangan talaga yung tawag dito yung i-promote, i-enhance, i-develop yung in proper how to deliver the sentence. Yung kailangan talaga yung pagtuturo natin sa classroom sa mga learners, dapat yung yung ma-consolidate sila in a proper on how to speak properly para ma-adapt, para ma-apply yung implicit knowledge. So, malaking tulong po yung implicit kasi isa yung tool para maka-communicate ka to others. And that's all for.
This is the continuation of Principle 4. This is Principle 5. Instruction needs to take into account the learner's built-in syllabus. So when we say built-in syllabus, it is an innate predisposition to acquire language, or the learner possesses an internal mechanism of unknown nature which enable him or her from the limited available data for him or her to construct a grammar of particular language, or the learner only internalize this grammar feature that they are needs to learn and how to learn each feature. Very gradually passing through a series of transition stages. So, How or then can instruction take account of the learner built-in syllabus? There are a number of possibilities. So, number 1, adopt a zero grammar approach as proposed by Krashen, that is employ a task approach that makes to attempt predetermine the linguistic content of lesson. So mag-adapt to tawag kanang kuan mga tao nga kanang zero grammar kanang wala sila kanang wala or murag bata ba nga kanang bitawng kuan. Wala pa sila kahibalo. Then second, ensure the learners to developmentally ready to acquire specific kanang magkuan kag kanang mga bata nga kanang ready na ma-adapt na nila ang imong ipangtudlo sa ilaha. Makuha na nila dali na ma-absorb silang kuan. Na magkuan ka og kanang mga learners nga kuan gid kanang dali na develop, dali na makuan ba, dali na catch up ang imong gipangtudlo sa ilaha. Mao man ni siya kanang ano siya dali to acquire specific target feature, or probably in practical teacher have no easy way to determine individual students have reached, and this is highly individualized approach to cater for differences and developmental level among the students. So na may klase-klase nga students nga klase-klase po kay balo or kuan nga na. What we noted earlier, fine tuning not necessary, while instruction as a target feature may not enable learning to beat the built-in syllabus. Mo na itong syllabus kanang kuan is special acquired language, acquired language ba kanang kuan acquired language. Mag-construct sila og kanang ilahang kuan grammar, mag-construct og grammar. Then 3, focus the instruction on explicit rather than implicit knowledge, as explicit knowledge is acquired same developmental constraint implicit known well probably true. The same declarative fact about language are easier to master than other. They likely reflect their cognitive rather than development complexity. Kasi kaning mag-focus sa kanang ang kuan magod explicit good is kanang panglabas kanang ilahan ng nakuan bitaw na nabalaan dito sa uban kana ilang aside sa ilang naobserbahan. Ang implicit is kanang nakabuilt-in na sila kanang ilahan ng mismo silang kaugalingon na ilahan ng kaugalingong kahibalo. Ang implicit is kanang mga aside sila na-observe or nahibaluan ngadto sa uban. Thank you.
Principle 6. Successful instructed language learning requires extensive language 2 input. Language learning, whether it occurs in naturalistic or uninstructed contexts, is a slow and laborious process. When we say it occurs in naturalistic or in a natural process, when the children learn to communicate using words and sounds they pick up from their environment, for instance, from their parents. Pag ang baby 5 to 6 months, they already recognize their name. Pagtawagon sila sa ilahang parents. And ang guide sa parents like moingunog up, come here, ma-adapt na nila. Mo nagkanang ginabalik-balik sa parents ang pagsulti. Mo nang ang nakabaluta sa ato first language is sa ato ang parents. Ellis and Wells 1980 demonstrated that the substantial portion of the variance in speed of acquisition of children can be accounted for by the amount and the quality of input they receive. They stated that if the learners do not receive exposure to the target language, they cannot acquire it. For instance, if the learners, first language as a language from birth to the time of starts of schools. They learn their first language from their family. That's why they learn faster, because they are exposed. That's their language when they are communicating inside their home. Because Ellis and Wells stated that the more exposure they receive, the faster they will learn. Pila ka years gigamit ang first language sa sulod sa panimalay maong mas grabe ang exposure niya dito kaysa sa Language 2 and Language 3. In Krashen 1981-1994 has adopted a very strong position on the importance of input. He points to studies that have shown the length of residence in the country, whether the language is spoken, is related to language proficiency, and other studies that have found positive correlation between the amount of reading reported and proficiency literacy. Krashen point out that the length of residence in the country when language is spoken is related to have an effective communicator in language 2. Krashen stated input must made comprehensible, modifying contextual props. For instance, the use of different source of input, and to make sure that the students master the language at all levels in speaking, listening, reading, and writing. By telling stories, sing songs, play games, watching movies. Mo na ang mga butang maka-adapt pud sila sa mga lahi-lahi nga language. Strategies for giving learners access to extensive input. Number 1, maximize the use of Language 2 inside the classroom. Ideally, this means that the Language 2 needs to become the medium as well as the object of instruction. Why Language 2 is important? For example, lahi-lahi ang first language ng mga tao. As Cebuano, nay mga Waray, Kapampangan, Bicolano, and iba pa. That's why second language is important dahil sa ganitong paraan ay magkakaintindihan tayo. For instance, naa ka sa school which ang ginagamit nga language doon is hindi yung nakasanayan mong language sa inyo. If nasa Manila, ang ginagamit nila is Tagalog. And hindi mo pwedeng gamitin yung language mong Cebuano dahil hindi kayo magkakaintindihan. Dahil sa Pilipinas, ang second language natin is Tagalog. Dahil kung iba-iba man ang ating first language na natutunan, magkakaintindihan pa rin tayo kung alam natin ang second language. Dapat din itong matutunan upang mas maintindihan. Number 2, create opportunities for students to receive input outside the classroom. This can be achieved most easily by providing extensive reading programs based on carefully selected graded readers suited to the levels of the students as recommended by Krashen. Create opportunities. The learners must practice their skills by extensive reading programs, self-access, and learner training. Or this means that ang estudyante need to study on their own by learning in experience or learning by doing. Kay they believe that pag ang estudyante kay nagbuhat gamit ang ilang skills or sila mismo ang expose, mas maka-learn sila og dali. That's all. Thank you.
Gene B, Australia. Assigned by topic would be the Principle 7 of Rhode Ellis. So Principle 7 is the successful instructed language learning also requires opportunities for output. What do you mean by that? Sabi ni Rhode Ellis. Ang magtagumpay na tagubilin sa pag-aaral ng wika ay nangailangan diin mga oportunidad para sa output. Ibig sabihin, language learner must have opportunities to produce output in order to gain fluency and accuracy. These are 7 contribution that summaries that output can make. Production service to generate better input through the feedback that learners' effort at production elicit. Explanation. Ang produksyon ay nagsasabi upang makabuo ng mas mahusay na input sa pamagitan ng feedback na sa pagsisikap ng mga mag-aaral sa produksyong elicit. Pangalawa, it forces syntactic processing. Ito ay pinipilit nito ang proseso ng syntactic. Ibig sabihin, pinipilit ng mga mag-aaral na bigyang pansin mga grammatical. Pangatlo, it allows learner to test hypothesis about target language grammar. Lesson. Pinapayagan nitong matuto ang mga mag-aaral ng hypothesis tungkol sa target na grammar ng wika. Pang-apat, it helps to summarize existing knowledge. Makatulong ito upang sa katuparan ng mayroon ng kaalaman. Number 5, it provides opportunities for learners to develop discourse skills, for example, by producing long-term terms. So, example, explanation, nagbibigay ito ng mga pagkakataon para sa mga mag-aral na bumuo ng kasanayan sa diskurso, halimbawa sa pamagitan ng paggawa ng mahabang pagliko. Number 6, it is important for helping learner to develop a person.
I am Harrison H. Nabisaga. I am the reporter of the Principal 8. The opportunity to interact in the IL2 is central to developing IL2 proficiency. So, ito yung pagkakataong makipag-ugnay sa mga tao na nasintro sa mga pagbuo ng mga kasanayan. So, interaction is not just a means of automatizing existing linguistic resources but also of creating new resources. Ito ay hindi lamang isang paraan ng pag-automate ng mga umiiral na mapagkukunang wika, ngunit din ng paglikha ng mga bagong mapagkukunan tulad na lang ng salimuha sa mga iba't ibang tao at pakikipag-usap. Interaction hypothesis, Long, 1996. Interaction fosters acquisition when a communication problem arises and learners are engaged in negotiating for meaning. Ito naman ang pagkikipag-ugnayan at nagtataguyod ng pagkuha kapag isang problema sa komunikasyon ay lumilitaw at ang mga mag-aaral ay nakikipag-ayos sa isang kahulugan. Interactional modification arising help to make input comprehensible, provide correct feedback, and pad learners to modify their own output in uptake. Ito naman ang mga pagbabago sa pagkikipag-ugnay na umuusbong at tumutulong upang maunawaan ang pag-input ng mga bagay ng wastong puna sa mga mag-aaral. At ito rin ang dahilan upang baguhin ang mga kanilang mga pagsasagawa ng mga wika. 4 requirements for interaction to create an acquisition-rich classroom. Number 1, creating context of language use where students have a reason to attend to language. Ito ay lumilikha ng mga konteksto ng paggamit ng wika kung saan ang mga mag-aaral ay may dahilan na dumalo sa mga iba't ibang mga wika. Number 2, providing opportunities for learners to use the language to express their own personal meaning. ito naman yung pagbibigay ng mga pagkakataon para sa mga mag-aaral na magamit ang wika upang ipahayag ang kanilang sariling personal na kahulugan. For example, mga Bisaya, mga Manobo. Number 3, helping students to participate in language-related activities that are beyond their current level of proficiency. Ito naman ang pagtulong sa mga mag-aaral na lumahok sa mga aktibidad na nauugnay sa wika na lampas sa kanilang mga kasalukuyang antas ng mga kasanayan. So dapat na to silang ipa-apil sa mga Number 4, offering a full range of context that caters for a full performance in the language. Ito naman yung pag-aalok ng isang buong saklaw ng konteksto na nagsasaad para sa isang buong pagganap sa wika.
Okay, good day everyone. So let's move on to Principle 9. The instruction needs to take account of individual differences. So karon natong mabalaan kung unsa na yung Principle 9. Okay. So learning is more successful when the instruction is matched to students' particular aptitude for learning. So kuan daw, ang learning daw sa bata is more successful siya kung ang imuhang gitudlo sa iya is interested ba siya or makaya ba sa iyang panghuna-huna nga sabton ang imuhang lesson. Okay, next. The students are motivated. So, motivated among students dapat. So, teachers can do little influence to students' intrinsic motivation, but there is a lot they can do to enhance their intrinsic motivation. So, ang teacher daw, makahatag siya og motivation sa students through extrinsic motivation. It means, muhatag kag rewards sa ila. For example, moingon ka nga, ang maka-perfect ani nga assignment is na ay rewards ako or ang maka-perfect ani nga assignment or exam is dili na mag-exam next nga exam. So mao na extrinsic motivation. So ang bata is maningkamot siya para makadawat siya og reward. Unlike sa intrinsic motivation is mao na siya ang kanang kagustuhon gyud sa bata nga buhaton nga i-motivate ang iyang kaugalingon. So let's see ang difference sa extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. So mauna ni siya kung giingon ganina. So extrinsic motivation, motivated to perform an activity to earn a reward or avoid punishment. So mao to. So nakita ninyo dire nga naay duha ka bata nga nag-football. Tapos ang extrinsic motivation nga bata is naningkamot siya to avoid punishment para ma-reach niya ang iyahang goal or makakuan siya og reward. Samantalang kaning intrinsic motivation is motivated to perform an activity for its own sake and personal reward. So kani siya pasabot ani is kanang gusto gyud niya nga mudaog para malipay siya, dili kay malipay ang uban para sa para sa iyahang kaugalingon ng iyang gusto buhaton nga kalipay. So mao to. Next, learners strategies training can raise students' awareness of approaches to learning. The learners can flexible in the use of approaches. So teacher should motivate students to learn. So kita nga mga teachers dapat i-motivate nato atong mga students, dapat pod improve nato ang atong mga teaching skills. Himuon nato ato ang mga instruction materials nga klaro or dali masabdan sa mga bata. Dili siya paspas, dili pud siya hinay. Kung paspas ka, di nila masabtan. Kung hinay ka, bored na pud kaayo sila. So bear in mind that it's the teacher's responsibility to ensure the students are motivated and stay motivated. So mauni responsibility nato as future teachers nga ensure ang atong students nga motivated sila, nga ganahan sila maminos sa atuhang lesson, ganahan sila mag-proceed o ganahan sila maka-learn. So that would be The principle 9, the instruction needs to take account of individual differences. Dapat ang imuhang instruction or instruction materials is kuan siya sa kanang kalahian sa mga estudyante or individual differences sa imuhang mga learners. So, mao to ang principle 9.
Principle 10, in assessing learners' L2 proficiency, it is important to examine free as well as controlled production. There are 4 types of measurement in Norris and Ortega. First is metalinguistic judgment or grammaticality judgment test. Kibali, gipangutana nimo ang isa ka bata kung unsay nakat-unan ani nga topic gamit ang L2 proficiency. Second is selected response or multiple choice. Gihatagan nimo sila og mga quizzes, activities nga dapat ilahang ansiran. Then, third is constructed response or gap filling exercise. Sa mga quizzes and activities na ay gi-provide ang mga teacher nga answer key. Pero dapat mag-answer usa ang mga bata or learners para na sila'y makatunan. Tapos, pagkahuman nilag answer, deserve pa nila tan-awon kung tama ba ang ilang answer og ato pong diha po nato mahibalan kung na ba sila'y nakatunan sa ilang gi-answer. Then, proceed. Magnitude of effect of instruction greatest in the case of 2 and 3 and less in 4. But ang 4 daw is mao ang pinaka-best measure of learners in L2 proficiency. Mao ang 4 daw ang 4. Ang ika-4 daw ang pinaka-best learner sa L2 proficiency. Then the performance is naa siya'y tulo ka pamaagi nga nag-assess. First is a direct most practical method for the classroom teacher, a direct assessment of task outcome. Second, discourse analytic measure. Third is external rating.